What if the solution to some of Canada's biggest economic headaches was also the key to its deepest social challenges? Well, today we're going to dig into a massive nation-building project that says it can do exactly that. It's a really bold vision for the future, and we're about to unpack it. The whole idea really kicks off with this powerful and, let's be honest, undeniable premise. It sets the stage right away that we're not talking about small adjustments here. We're talking about a fundamental transformative shift, a real challenge to the status quo. And this is the question at the very heart of it all. In a country like ours, with so many complex issues, what's the common ground? What kind of big, shared project could actually bring everyone together? The vision we're about to explore is positioned as the answer. Okay, so to really get the proposed solution, we first have to understand the problems it's trying to solve. The sources we're looking at paint a picture of a nation that's really at a critical point, facing some deep, deep challenges, both with its economy and its society. So here's the economic puzzle. Canada has all these incredible resources, potash, grain, oil, you name it, but they're basically stuck inland. Getting them out to the rest of the world means these long, expensive trips through the mountains or relying on trade routes to the south, and that leaves our economy wide open to things like U.S. tariffs. Get this, the bottleneck is costing Canada an estimated $20 million in lost revenue every single day, and that's just on oil. But the thing is, the economic problems, that's only half the picture. The sources argue there's a far more urgent crisis, a systemic failure happening right here at home inside Canada's Indigenous communities. 37. Just let that number sink in for a second. As of early 2025, that's how many long-term drinking water advisories are still in effect in Indigenous communities across the country. Some of these have been in place for decades. And the data, well, it lays the scale of the issue bare. We're talking suicide rates up to 3 times the national average. 61% of Indigenous young adults haven't finished high school. Nearly half of all First Nation households are dealing with food insecurity. The sources are really clear on this. These aren't just separate problems. They're all part of a devastating cycle, one that's fueled by a lack of economic opportunity and self-determination. So, with those huge challenges on the table, the sources introduce a project designed to tackle them head-on, a project that's trying to fix the economic gridlock by solving the social crisis. And this is it, NeeStaNan. The name itself comes from the Cree language, and it means all of us. It's a name that really captures this whole philosophy of collaboration, of inclusion, and of shared prosperity for every single Canadian, all rooted in Indigenous leadership. So what is NeeStaNan exactly? Well, think of it as a huge utility corridor, a single path for rail lines, for pipelines, for communication cables, stretching all the way from Alberta to a new seaport on Hudson Bay. But the most revolutionary part isn't the steel or the tracks, it's the ownership. The entire project would be 100% owned and governed by First Nations. And that right there, that is the absolute game changer. For decades, big projects have been about consulting with First Nations. This model just flips that script completely. It moves from a position of being consulted to one of full ownership, full control, and real economic self-determination. So let's actually look at what this ownership model could mean. What does it look like on the ground? How does it actually help the very communities facing the crises we just talked about? Well, it looks like this. An estimated $80 billion in revenue every year flowing directly to First Nations. And the sources stress this isn't government money. It's designed to be true self-generated economic independence. And that $80 billion, that becomes the engine to rebuild communities from the inside out. It's the money to finally fix the water crisis, to build better housing, to fund schools and healthcare, and to create local economies that last, finally breaking that cycle of dependency. This quote from Ellis Ross just cuts right to the heart of it. The argument is that this project isn't really about pipelines or ports. At its core, it's about giving people the chance to provide for their families and build a real future for their kids, a vision of hope that's grounded in economic reality. But the vision of NeeStaNan, all of us, it doesn't stop there. The sources make a really strong case that this Indigenous-led prosperity will create a massive ripple effect that strengthens the entire Canadian economy. The economic impact they're projecting is just staggering. Beyond the $80 billion for First Nations, the project is forecast to add $1 trillion to the wider Canadian economy. This really highlights the central argument. Indigenous prosperity is national prosperity. One fuels the other. So how does it generate all that wealth? by solving that logistics puzzle we saw earlier. Instead of that long, difficult route west through the mountains and crowded ports, NeeStaNan creates a direct, super efficient path east to a brand new deepwater port on Hudson Bay. The difference is massive. This new route would shave over 4,400 kilometers off a lot of export journeys. That's more than a 30% shorter trip, which means Canadian resources get to market faster, are cheaper to ship, and become way more competitive on the world stage. And a shorter route isn't just about saving time and money, it's also a lot better for the environment. By cutting all that distance, the project is projected to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from shipping and rail by nearly 30%. So it's framed as a win for the economy and for Canada's climate goals. The sources keep coming back to this really powerful phrase to describe the project. It's about a declaration of economic independence, no longer being so reliant on U.S. trade routes, no longer so vulnerable to their tariffs. It's about strengthening Canada's own security and sovereignty in a pretty turbulent world. So as we start to wrap this up, it's really clear the vision for NeeStaNan is so much bigger than just a single corridor. It's being positioned as a whole new way of thinking about how Canada can grow and move forward. And ultimately, that's the core idea here. NeeStaNan is being presented as a blueprint, a tangible, real-world example of what economic reconciliation actually looks like. It's a model where Indigenous leadership drives a project that creates prosperity for First Nations, which in turn strengthens the entire national economy and secures Canada's place in the world. And so we end right back where we started, with a question. The people behind NeeStaNan are basically asking all of us to look at this blueprint and to ask ourselves, is this a path toward a more united, more prosperous Canada for all of us?